If you haven't watched it yet, check out part 1 of the United States presidents. Starting with a great one, after William McKinley was assassinated, Theodore Roosevelt became president at the age of 42, making him the youngest president ever. He was a great outdoorsman who sought about conserving the United States' natural beauty, so he set up the national monuments and parks. He helped Russia and Japan make peace, winning him the Nobel Peace Prize. He began construction on the Panama Canal and strengthened the Navy yet again. He led the country into the Progressive era with his Square Deal, which sought fairness for all. His nickname Teddy became the source of the name of the teddy bear. Roosevelt's chosen successor was William Howard Taft. He was very interested in foreign affairs in Central America and East Asia. He became at odds with Roosevelt, who remained as a prominent Republican. Taft was more conservative, often being more sympathetic to big business, so Roosevelt left the party and ran for re-election, which split the Republican vote, leading to a huge Democrat victory with Woodrow Wilson. Wilson had a lot of control, as the Democrats also ruled Congress while he was in the White House. He brought in many progressive laws, including the Federal Reserve Act and the Federal Farm Loan Act, and he also reintroduced income tax. Yay! It was during Wilson's presidency that World War I broke out in Europe in 1914. He kept the States out of it initially, but after many factors, including Germany potentially allying with a volatile Mexico, Wilson brought the United States into the trenches in 1917. He clamped down on anti-war attitudes harshly. He introduced conscription, which caused US numbers to soar in France. Under his presidency came the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. Took you long enough. This annoyed the South, but he staffed his cabinet with pro-segregation Democrats, so you win some, you lose some. Loaning loads of money to the Allies, the United States made loads of money from World War I. With the end of the war, Wilson travelled to Paris and helped set up the League of Nations and put together the Treaty of Versailles. For this, he got the Nobel Peace Prize. Bit premature there, lads. Wilson suffered a stroke towards the end of his office. It was his Wilsonian attitude that established the foreign policy of promoting democracy across the world. Towards the end of his presidency also came Prohibition, which outlawed alcohol, although Wilson had little to do with that. Warren G. Harding in life was a very popular president. In death, it turned out he'd been involved in huge corruption, bribery, private oil companies, and a lady that was not his wife, and thus his popularity plummeted. His vice, Calvin Coolidge, became president. He was quiet and kept a small government, working on middle-class ideals. He was the first president to broadcast on the radio. His presidency saw the Roaring Twenties, a time of lavish luxury in the States, at least for the rich. But it was not to last. Less than a year into Herbert Hoover's presidency came the Wall Street crash of 1929, sending the economy into freefall, resulting in 25% unemployment and many people losing all their money. Constantly trying to balance the budget, Hoover threw up taxes which only made things worse, becoming the Great Depression. Prohibition, which Hoover was in favour of, wasn't helping things, as no tax was coming in from the outlawed alcohol. Criminal organisations grew in power at this time, bootlegging illegal alcohol. Oops. In the fight against the Depression, Hoover had the Hoover Dam built. People grew tired of this downward spiral, and change was needed. Franklin D. Roosevelt won a landslide victory, offering the country a New Deal which involved more federal involvement in the economy and state jobs for the unemployment and regulation on businesses, banks and Wall Street. This New Deal saw a liberal turn in the Democratic Party. The gold standard was preventing enough money to be in circulation, so Franklin severed the link between the dollar and gold and began to pump money into the economy and get it going again. Roosevelt suffered from polio, and since the 1920s was paralysed from the waist down. He hid this from the public by developing a way of walking using hidden leg braces, balancing between his son and a walking stick. He didn't want to appear weak. World War II broke out and Roosevelt initially kept out of the war, but as the protector of democracy, he supplied aid to the Allies. He began the work on the development of the atomic bomb in case Nazi Germany were to do the same. After the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, USA entered the war. Franklin ordered the incarceration of 110,000 people of Japanese descent, many who were US citizens. The USA was in a state of total war, the whole country working towards the war effort. Unemployment was down to 2%, with many people either joining the armed forces or working in war factories. Roosevelt worked with Allied leaders in the war efforts, laying the groundwork for what would become the United Nations. Roosevelt was elected for a record 4 terms. Roosevelt died a month before the German surrender, leaving the war and the presidency to Harry Truman. Truman oversaw the end of the war in Europe and approved the dropping of 2 atomic bombs on Japan, which promptly put an end to the war in the Pacific. As president, Truman moved out beyond isolationism into the international sphere, helping establish the United Nations. At the end of this war, the United States was truly a superpower in the world, the other major superpower being the communist Soviet Union. Truman moved to stop the spread of communism, beginning what would become the Cold War. Truman oversaw the Berlin airlift in which US planes flew aid into West Berlin, which was surrounded by an increasingly antagonistic Soviet Union. He also saw the Marshall Plan help rebuild Western Europe, and NATO was established to hold together against the threat of the Soviets. Back home, he pushed for civil rights and began the racial integration of the military and federal agencies. Truman saw the establishment of the CIA, the Department of Defense, the National Security Council, and the NSA. Hi guys. From this time on, the presidency would be limited to 2 4-year terms. The end of his presidency saw the Korean War, where UN forces attempted to stop the communist takeover of Korea. Former World War II General Dwight D Eisenhower became president and inherited the Korean War, and he threatened nuclear weapons to end it. His idea of nuclear deterrence became a defining feature of the Cold War as the Soviet Union became nuclear equipped. International intervention increased under Eisenhower in Guatemala, Iran, and Vietnam. He sought to isolate recently turned Communist People's Republic of China, wanting to maintain pressure on communism. He criticised Britain, France and Israel's invasion of Egypt during the Suez Crisis and forced them to pull out. At home he expanded social security, set up the interstate highway system, DARPA, and pushed for science, education and safe nuclear power. In reaction to the Soviets launching Sputnik into space, he set up NASA. Rocket technology was very important when nuclear warheads were available. After the Cuban Communist Revolution, Eisenhower planned an invasion of Cuba, using Cuban exiles trained by the CIA. This operation, however, would be inherited by his successor. As he left office, Eisenhower warned against the growing strength of the military-industrial complex, and how war could potentially be very profitable to those who make the weapons. Check out part 3 for the rest of the 20th century and beyond. Thanks very much for watching, guys. A lot of work has gone into this, and all your support is always greatly appreciated. If you want to see more, please show your support through Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. If you want to finally get your hands on a Manny Man book, you can. Manny Man Does the History of Ireland tells the story of all the ups and downs on the island of Ireland and how it affected the world. This book features new and exclusive artwork, and you can buy it in all good Irish bookshops, or you can order it online at collinspress.ie. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a happy Christmas. And if you're watching this nowhere near Christmas, then have a happy whatever time of the year you're watching this. Yay!